there is a legal maneuver. I mean, these are attorneys general from all these different states who are suing because of what's happening at the federal level, and with Elon Musk and DOGE access to private information, and also the mass firings. Go ahead, Tony, if you would, please.
All right. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow the firing of the head of the federal agency dedicated to protecting whistleblowers. A lower court had previously blocked the move. Let's bring in CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen to talk more about this. So, Jake, what is the Office of the Special Counsel for our viewers to understand? And why
okay, this is stop right here, Tony. There's, as usual, there is so much going on that I have to almost just distinguish. This is the court case about the firing, again, as was just noted, of the special counsel, but this isn't the special counsel that you may think of. You think of maybe special counsel in regard to some of the investigations on Trump or some of the investigations on Hunter Biden. It's not that special counsel. It's the whistleblower agency special counsel. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. And why are whistleblowers so key? Because whistleblowers step forward and tell you a bunch of stuff that's going on that's illegal or horribly wrong, immoral, and worse, right? This is really how we know about so much. There are whistleblower protections that are built into the laws at the federal level and beyond. So, I mean, Alexander Vindman, remember him from the first Trump impeachment? He was in on that call with the Ukrainian president, and how there was a quid pro quo when Trump was trying to extract from him the guarantee that he would find dirt on Joe Biden or say that they were investigating improprieties around Joe Biden. That came through, that is to say, Vindman's testimony came through whistleblower protections. So Trump is trying to get rid of whistleblowers at the federal level. That's what this is about. When you hear special counsel, that refers to that. Sorry, Tony, please continue.
Well, this is not like the special counsels that we've heard for the last 2 years who investigated
He'll explain the same thing. Okay.
This is a different office that's more permanent at the in the government, which basically oversees the potentially illegal firings of workers and protects them. It protects whistleblowers and also enforces Hatch Act violations if someone were to make political speech while they're in their official capacity for office. You can see why the Trump administration would want to get rid of someone like this, who especially was appointed under President Biden, because of the quick pace that you and Willie just discussed of firing federal workers and clearing out entire departments of the government if Elon Musk gets his way after some of these court decisions are played out. But this person, Hampton Dellinger, has sued to get his job back. He is currently back in the post, and the Trump administration has listened so far to the judge. However, we'll see what the Supreme Court decides in terms of what potential presidential and executive branch power Donald Trump can use to fire some of these independent workers.
Okay, so that is important, because they do want to get this up to the Supreme Court. This administration doing a lot of it's illegal. The firing of these workers is illegal. At least you go from the letter of the law. The firing of the attorneys general is illegal. You can't just go and fire a bunch of these, inspector generals. You can't do it. I mean, it's not allowed. In fact, I have some video of that.
At least 30 days before the removal of any inspector general, the president must provide Congress with, and I quote, a substantive rationale, including detailed and case-specific reasons. President Trump provided no notice to Congress and no justification. You're a lawyer. How many days has the president been in office?
Since January 20th.
Which is how many days fewer than 30?
I'm a lawyer, not a math guy. But
I'll just put it
is fewer than 30.
It is a matter of mathematical impossibility for the president to have followed the statute and provided us with the required notice, correct?
I don't know.
If he hasn't been president for 30 days, how could he have given us 30 days notice as required by the statute?
He obviously did not.
He obviously did not. Do you think he broke the law by firing these attorneys general, these inspectors general?
As I was saying before, I don't know. I wasn't part of the decisions that he and the White House counsels made in making that decision. I don't want to speak to whether the president broke the law. I just don't know.
Okay, stop right there just for a second. Stop. I want to make the point. This is Todd Blanche. He represented Trump in the New York case, That's how you may know him. And he's now going to be a part of this administration. I think he's he's number 2 at the Justice Department, I believe. Go ahead, Tony, please.
But you know that he hasn't been president for 30 days.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that the relevant statute for the removal of any inspector general requires prior notice to Congress with specific reason.
So this is already then a breaking of the law, right? I mean, it's stipulated you need 30 days notice, and there was no notice given. And that's what's really been happening. They are going in hot. This is really the coin of the realm, the MO of not only Trump. I think Trump has less to do with this sort of strategy and more Project 2025. I mean, this is really what they talked about. They talked about it in great detail. This is what we're going to do. It was laid out such that they are checking out and checking off all the boxes and all the strategies that they articulated they would employ. And so when it comes to, for example, the Musk SEAL Team 6 of hackers that he brings into the Treasury Department, that he brought in to USAID, and you see the way they just invade essentially government computers and government operations, and they decapitate these agencies. There is a question about legality here, but the reason that the inspectors general are so important is if you care about justice, if you care about legality, and you care about restraint on the executive office and on people like Musk, who, as I've just described, and I've only described a fraction of what they're doing, move through government with utter abandon, literally abandoning all legal restraint. If you care about that, you care about these inspectors general. They are non-political. So don't tell me you care about the American people, you care about government, and then allow for the dismissal of these inspectors general. It makes no sense. And it was done illegally. So that's one of the things that's going on. Oh, this is terrific. Now, Suozzi is he's a congressman from New York. And listen to him light things up on the floor of Congress. Go ahead.
People who come to work for the federal government, if you're a cabinet official, you have to go through these big hearings. A lot of people have to go through background checks. A lot of people have to go through security checks. They get security clearance. What kind of background checks or transparency into the background of Mr. Musk or the people that are working for him has been done? Do you know, Mr. DeBlanc?
I don't know the background checks. I know President Trump had an electoral mandate to create DOGE.
No, I understand that. But yeah, he has his electoral mandate to hire cabinet officials, but they have to go through hearings and things like that. Mr. Sepp, do you know how these people were vetted?
No.
Mr. Ladwood, do you know how they were vetted?
No.
Ms. Kochelicek, do you know how they were vetted?
We have not looked at these specific individuals.
Ms. Olson, do you know how they were vetted?
No.
What kind of access does Mr. Musk and his team have? What kind of changes have they been making to the computer programs? How many of those changes to computer programs are permanent? And how will that affect people going forward? Mr. LeBlanc, what's he doing?
I don't know what he's doing.
You don't know.
I
Okay,
think he's
Mr.
looking
Sepp, do you
at.
know what he's doing?
No.
Mr. Ladwood, do you know what he's doing?
It would be inappropriate of me for comment on
Ms.
that.
Kochelicek, do you know what he's doing?
We have not looked at that.
Ms. Olson?
No.
Does anybody here know what they're doing? Does anybody know what kind of keystrokes changes they're making and they're permanent? Does anybody know what their backgrounds are? Does anybody know what they're doing with the information that they have and how they're using it? I agree with my colleagues who noted before that Mr. Littlejohn, who disclosed this information, is a criminal and deserves to be in jail, and I'm happy that he's been prosecuted. And anybody who has violated 6103, that takes private data and shares it with other people should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We in Congress have an obligation as an equal branch of government to monitor what's going on right now. We're all for finding cost efficiencies. I know Mr. Bean, for example, has the DOGE committee. That's a great thing for us to look for efficiencies, to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. But there's a pesky thing called the United States Constitution, and it has the responsibilities of the United States Congress in the oversight and power of the purse. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I thought that was just brilliant. I mean, that's exactly right. Hey, we're all for cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And I love that that trio of reasons carries the day over and over and over again, because we're all on board with that, right? So if I say, well, Elon Musk is there to, root out waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay, great. I mean, we're all on the same page. Let's do it legally. Congress is the entity that is described as the thing that will help evaluate what is waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, you may say, well, Congress is the problem. Okay. We can have that conversation, but we can't change the document that gave them the right to appropriate money and the right to both create and dismantle government organizations. You can't just dismantle them on your own. Now, as I've mentioned to you before, the plan they have is to go around Congress by sapping these various agencies of support, of money, of personnel. And that's what they're doing, and they're doing it with a wrecking ball right out of the chute, right? But this is a plan that is click-clacking along, and it's not being called out by Congress. In fact, there was a great piece that just spoke to this directly. It was in the Washington Post. And I'll just read you a couple of pieces of this, and then I'm going to tell you about something else about the Washington Post, which is alarming and scary about the Post itself. The first and perhaps only government entity that should return to work is Congress. To be clear, they say, I'm not concerned about whether government workers return to their desks in offices. Members of Congress are probably already in their correct geographic locations, but they have been neglecting many of their required job functions. For government to function efficiently and correctly, it's time for them to return to work. Here are some congressional duties they might want to consider as high priority. Power of the purse. The legislative branch holds the authority to tax and appropriate funds. The members have failed to appropriate funds before the end of the fiscal year. The federal government operates on a fiscal year that begins October 1st. In fiscal 2024, Congress approved 4 continuing resolutions that temporarily allowed federal government operations to continue. For the current fiscal year, the second continuing resolution ends March 14th. Again, this might be boring, but in this one fact is something that I've mentioned to you before. Democrats, you can, as the minority party, you can help hold their feet to the fire on this. Make these congressional representatives actually vote to keep the government open or to close the government down, to allow it to close down. A lot of these guys feel as though, government, it's a waste. We're basically taking it apart anyway. Government's the problem. Great. Let you guys close it down then. Close down government and see how that goes and own it. Let the GOP own Trump and Project 2025's agenda. Russell Vogt, who's the OMB guy, I've talked to you about him. We talked to you about him before anybody was talking to you about him. Or certainly it wasn't out there in the mainstream. I really feel as though it's easy to lose the plot with everything going on. So, immigration policy, they point out. The Constitution says nothing about immigration. Why would it, when some of the founding fathers were immigrants themselves? The Supreme Court, however, has said much about it over the decades, including that the plenary authority for immigration policy resides with Congress. But Congress hasn't taken action. They've just given this over to the executive orders. And Trump is ruthless on immigration. And again, you might be good with it. Okay. We all agree, I think, in the main, that there's an immigration problem. But there are ways to address it that make sense before you turn the whole economy on its side and before you get into the kind of pitched battle that the executive branch is in. Members of Congress, when it comes to DOGE, have again abdicated their roles to the chief executive, seemingly in violation of the Constitution. That's what we were just hearing. This pseudo Department of Government Efficiency is issuing edicts that lack congressional authority. Once again, see what we said even before they took power. We said there's no way DOGE is not legitimate. It hasn't been established by Congress. They have no actual power. Maybe they can advise, maybe they can say this should happen, that should happen, but without any real power that is vested in them officially by Congress, they can't do anything. Well, where's Congress? They are asleep on this, and they're letting DOGE get rid of government workers and essentially decapitate a bunch of government organizations. And when you look at the organizations they're going after, you see that Elon Musk is settling personal scores. Many of these agencies had huge regulatory fines and investigations going on against some of his companies, SpaceX, Tesla, etc. It is also, not to mention, despicable that you could let a guy with so much conflict of interest, a wildly conflicted contractor, huge contractor with the U.S. government, go through and decide what organizations and what businesses and other contractors should get money from the federal government. It's just grotesque. It's a grotesque conflict of interest, and yet it's allowed to happen. So they go on in this Post piece just to point out some of the stuff we've talked about before, but really how the power to restrain and to focus a lot of what's happening rests in congressional hands, and Congress has really abdicated their role to the chief executive, to the president. This president is so strong. He has such a following. Again, it's not a wide following from the standpoint of overwhelming majority support, but it's a scary following. It's a feverish following. It's an emotional, passionate following. And Mitt Romney and others have talked about the fact that they worry about their own safety and the safety of their family. So, it's against that backdrop that a lot of this stuff is happening. So they note in the Post piece, and then I'll tell you something else about the Post. I suspect that many members of Congress do not actually want to do the tough work of governing and thrashing out legislative compromises. So they're happy to let the Trump-Elon Musk presidential team sidestep them and shape everything themselves. I suspect that many members of Congress, primarily in the president's own party, are so frightened of losing the next election that they will do anything to stay out of the Trump-Musk crosshairs, even to the point of allowing the Constitution itself to be completely put aside. I suspect some members of Congress believe the ends justify the means, so they won't lift a finger to prevent the subversion of our Constitution. That was a Washington Post. I read you just a couple of excerpts. That was a letter to the editor that jumped out at me, and I thought it was really right on. I mean, it does rest with Congress to see that through. But the other thing that's happening at the Washington Post is extraordinary, and it's a sign of the kind of pre-surrender that we're seeing from so many media organizations, as ABC News tapped out, paid the $15 million, as CBS News was going to settle with the Trump administration and Donald Trump about the interview with Kamala Harris in the 60 Minutes piece. Then he bumped up the amount of money he was seeking. Now he's suing CBS for $20 billion over the 60 Minutes interview, suggesting that it was cut so it would more favorably showcase Kamala Harris. The reality is that usually the rule on cutting pieces in news is sometimes you cut them for to create an efficiency of time. Sometimes you cut them for any number of other reasons. Usually, though, it's not to change the essence of what the person's saying. I mean, I would say that that would violate kind of journalistic code if you did that. But you may look at the, Kamala Harris stuff and go, well, she was just kind of talking word salad and they cleaned up her thing. I don't know if that is true. I haven't seen the clip. But all I'm trying to say is, $20 billion, it's a shakedown. That's a shakedown. Now, how does that shakedown work? And then I'll get to what happened at the Washington Post and their pre-surrender. The shakedown works like this. Paramount and CBS, same entity, they want to merge. It's another media merger, and they need government approval for that merger. So the government, I'll remind you, is run by Donald Trump, Musk, and the GOP. And they would just as soon not be in a legal battle with Donald Trump when they're looking for the okay from the government. on this merger. So Trump knows this, starts with a lawsuit against 60 Minutes that's been sitting there now for, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. And it started with a lower number in the million. It was still ridiculous, right? I mean, it was a shakedown, but now it's $20 billion. So this shakedown is now a substantial amount, but the underlying reasons that you may have to settle it haven't changed. You still need cooperation with this government. And Trump knows this. I'm sure that's one of the reasons that they upped the number. So how many media organizations are going to enrich this president in hopes that this president will approve whatever bigger business opportunity they need? Look at all of the other tech bros that showed up at his inauguration after donating money to him. So this is all going on. And at the Washington Post, they have nixed an ad that was to have run. It was going to be wrapped in, it was going to be the wrapper for the paper, meaning the thing that enveloped the paper. And it was an ad that essentially said, fire Elon Musk. So it was paid for, I think it was $150,000, this ad. It was an agreement to run the ad that covered the front and back page of the paper. And in so doing, there was also a full-page ad with the same theme inside the paper, and it said that they were going to purchase that ad and had purchased the ad in collaboration with the Southern Poverty Law Center Action Fund, okay? So some of the money is coming from that. It was a $115,000 agreement, as it turns out. I'm just looking at it here. So the ad's design featured a large picture of Musk with his head tilted back laughing, along with a cutout of the White House in a large white text. Tony's got it on screen now. Great job, Tony. I didn't even warn you I was going to be doing this, and that's great.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. So in any case, that's what the ad would have looked like. Those of you who are watching and those listening, I've just described it. Again, large picture of Musk, head tilted back, laughing, along with a cutout image of the White House, large white text, and it says, who's running this country, Donald Trump or Elon Musk? Then lower down on the page, it features smaller font saying, since day one, Elon has created chaos and confusion and put our livelihoods at risk, and he is accountable to no one but himself. The Constitution only allows for one president at a time. Call your senators and tell them it's time Donald Trump fire Elon Musk. And then it has the URL, firemusk.org. Now, apparently, the Post's advertising sales reps were told about the nature of the ad, and they were confident that they could run the ad there at the Washington Post, and it wouldn't be an issue. Again, the paper with the wrap ad was supposed to be delivered to subscribers at the Congress, at Pentagon, at the White House. Quote, we submitted the artwork back on Tuesday of last week. I'm assuming it went through a legal department or other kind of review. They said you can have something inside the paper, but you can't do the wrap. We said, thanks, no thanks, because we had a lot of questions, according to Case Solomon, who was behind this. Common Cause, learning that the Post would not run the outside paper ad criticizing Musk. It's because we're critical of what's happening with Elon Musk. Is it only okay to run things in the Post now that won't anger the president? This is what she was asking as she continued to talk about this controversy. Or do we have him calling Jeff Bezos, asking why this was allowed? Is that what the fear is? She said the Post did not give an explanation of any kind for why it decided not to run the ad. But you can do the arithmetic, because they don't want to anger Donald Trump. That's exactly why it happened. But what you see is the capitulation of Bezos. There he is with Kash Patel. This might have been on Inauguration Day or in some of the inauguration and inaugural events around Inauguration Day. And you see the surrender of the media, of the news organizations that are supposed to keep this Trump administration honest, you see them pre-surrendering at the highest levels. I think some of the journalism around this administration and some of the journalism generally at the Washington Post is extraordinary, exceptional. I mean, you're tripping over Pulitzer Prizes as you're walking through that newsroom. But where are they now? They're now more in the space with Facebook. They're now more in the space where we see increasing numbers of media organizations basically just tapping out. I told you about ABC, CBS. It goes way beyond that. So that's the situation with the Washington Post. And I also said on this show, this is after they wouldn't publish the op-ed. You know, originally the Washington Post op-ed crew, the editorial page said, we're going to endorse Kamala Harris. And there were decisions made at the paper saying, no, we're not going to endorse anybody. We're going to pull that endorsement, the articulated endorsement. We're not going to do it. And I saw so many of my journalistic colleagues, et cetera, I mean, some of whom I have immense respect for, they pulled their subscriptions to the Washington Post. They canceled them. And I made the point on this show, I think there's still so much great journalism being done at the Washington Post. And I still feel as though there's great journalism being done at the Washington Post. But wow, they really challenge your loyalty with stuff like this when they won't even allow for what is a legitimate ad buy to run in the Post. I mean, you'd sell that rep to Oscar nominations if Paramount wanted to run it, if any one of these, if Comcast wanted to run some ad they paid $115,000 for, you'd run it, Washington Post. But in this case, you're worried about antagonizing the king. It seems clear. And so for that reason, I'm more sympathetic to those who have stepped away from the paper. Again, I have such mad respect for the journalists who work there, but wow, they really do challenge this all the way. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.